welcome to today's edition of the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, we are analyzing the security sector progress in light of the 43rd Tarehe Sita celebrations in the country, but also later in the show we shall discuss the school fees crisis in the country, and we know that education is one of the fundamental pillars that should steer the progress of our motherland, Uganda. Helping us discuss those two very important topics is a panel of distinguished citizens of the Pearl of Africa, whom I will introduce. Starting with my immediate left, I have Dr. Sarah Bireete, the ED Center for Constitutional Governance. Doctor, you most welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Thank you, Doctor. Next to the doctor is from the Uganda People's Congress, the Honorable Joaeph Ochieno. Honorable Joseph, you're most welcome to the show.
Good to be here, thank you.
And last but not least is Major Retired Counsel Awich Pollar from the National Resistance Movement, who is also the Director, External Affairs at the Secretariat. Major, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, and viewers, greetings from the mighty NRM.
Thank you, the mighty NRM, for being here. Now, I start with the mighty NRM. In this country, Uganda, we have very many celebrations that are linked to the mighty NRM, as you call it. Heroes Day, Liberation Day, Tarehe Sita. Help us understand, what is this Tarehe Sita and how unique in terms of significance is it from the other celebrations we have in the country?
Well, help you understand. To help you understand, and maybe viewers, is that Tarehe Sita is a Swahili word. Tarehe in Swahili means date. Sita is 6. So Tarehe Sita is 6th day of the month. Normally the month is ignored, but it's just Tarehe Sita to fix to the date. You can have Tarehe Moja, that is the first, Tarehe Bili, that is the second, Tarehe Tatu, Tarehe Ine, like that. So it is the 6th day of the month. But in this case, it's the 6th day of February. And in which case, it is in reference to the 6th day of February, 1981, when 27 armed people attacked Kabamba. And it signified the struggle of the struggle, because, as you know, it's a protracted struggle with challenges, winding and twisting, and sometimes straight line, straight path, and all that. But it led to the capture of power in 1986, 26 February again, which we celebrated the other day. Incidentally, the two events, one was chosen to be a public holiday, that is 26. The 6th was chosen not to. Reason being, the 6th was chosen to be what it is because it's purely taken as a military day, like an army day. And as you know, an army is just one instrument of the government or the arm of state. But 26, taking over the reign of power, which was ushered in by Legal Notice number 1 of 1986, which gave the state power to NRM, it is a public holiday. So, Tarehe Sita is a Swahili word, therefore meaning the 6th of February, which was 1981. But the significance, maybe I reserve that, we shall talk it later, but I thought at this point, I would just stop to explain what Tarehe Sita is.
Thank you so much, Major. The 6th day of February, 27 armed people. Dr. Sarah Bireete, 27 armed people attacked Kabamba military barracks, and many years later they took power in the country. How do you see the significance of the 27 people, the significance of celebrating this day, what they have achieved, what they did? Is it something that was justifiable?
Well, to begin with, the act you just mentioned is an act of a group of Ugandans attacking a government installation, stealing arms to wage war against the constitutional government. So to understand the flip side of it, if ADF came and attacked Masaka barracks and took arms, would you wish citizens to celebrate that event, the attack? So for me, the first issue I have, because this is the 43rd anniversary of NRM waging war against NRA, the army, waging war against the constitutional government. Is it something that we should celebrate? If you look at, of course, the Carlson theory, if you establish a new legal order, if you overthrow government with the force of arms and establish a new constitution, legal order, then there is no crime. But why do we celebrate that attack on a constitutional government? Because it can happen to this very government. Is this the legacy we would want to see as a country? Unfortunately for Uganda, we have only experienced political, violent force of political power. Every government lives by a coup, except the few transitional. I know that the peaceful handover of the trial presidency to Obote too, it was generally interim, just to organize elections, preside over the organization of elections under the commission chaired by Paul Mwanga. But every other regime goes by the use of force. So when you say, I'm sure many people have been wondering, but why 43? Because NRM is 38 years. So why 43? Two, then why do you create a special day? Away from the NRM day that they celebrate on 26th. So if I was in parliament, I would move an amendment to collapse those two redundant days into one. Because if you celebrate NRM day, it is a capture of power. Although it is supposed to be 25th, but the official announcement was made the next day. Why then celebrate an attack on a constitutional government? Because you are also a government today, and you can be attacked. We are several times attacked. Kasese, you hear, although there is no stealing of arms, but one or two occasions you have people, police station attacked, arms have gone missing. It's the same thing with Kabamba. So for me, I don't see any significance with that. Just last year, we had school children attacked, murdered by ADF, which also is seeking to remove NRM by using the force of arms, the method that we celebrate. So me, I'm against that 43rd, celebrating that attack on a constitutional government, on a government installation, government security installation at that. That is not a legacy that we need to celebrate. The NRM has on several occasions justified why they waged war. But all these reasons have lost relevance since then. A rigged election, I think we can discuss who is rigging better. The crimes that happened did not even manifest in 1980. The human rights violations, we are faced with kidnaps. The torture, detention without trial, same thing. We are where we started. Whatever they allege they fought for is what they are doing. So why celebrate?
Thank you, Dr. Honorable Ochieno Joseph from the Uganda People's Congress. This must be so dear to you. How does the Uganda People's Congress view the Tarehe Sita celebrations in the country?
You're right that it's extremely dear to us, but I do not think the dearness is about us in UPC. We consider ourselves the vanguards of our national independence, and as Sarah rightly and aptly put it, it cannot really be a partisan political issue. It's a question of our national integrity and national unity the very reality and fact of our national existence. The most abominable part of this really is the fact that not only are these days that are marked, I find it extremely insulting that the 26th is a public holiday. But something more away from this, the fact that both dates, which are basically NRA, UPM, RPA days, national resources, public resources, go on to these extremely wasteful celebrations. I was at a meeting, with a training that offered a free training for some group of young people in a completely separate environment. And I got a phone call from a Musoga lawyer, Sarah, who has a mother of two who's practiced. Okay, he's been, since he's graduating, and I think even gone to LDC the other, yet to go to LDC, but 7 years. And she has no job. And she told me that the trail of vehicles going to Bugweri, going to Bosesa, and I know the place,
For the
was
celebrations.
crude for the so-called celebration, extremely huge. Big vehicles, pumping and fuel jumping stuff, mean-looking soldiers and security guys, boasting, funny individuals, all of whom were going there at public expenses. The next part of our conversation is education. You young guys, by the way, you do very well in your youth roundtable programs. I sometimes just don't get enough time to watch. The other day you were talking about youth unemployment. And so parents struggle to churn out, take their children to school, just about to manage. Young people graduate. This young, extremely beautiful and extremely intelligent Musoga lady, 7 years on, has got no job. And she's watching, and she can hardly afford. I have somebody who graduated 12 years ago, a mother of 3 children. The other day calls me and works, and calls me the weekend of children going back to school. I'm not discussing that topic yet. Looking for merely 100,000 Uganda shillings. And you could see how difficult the struggle was, basically to beg for 100,000 shillings. See, what really are we on this question of national priority, as it were? 43 years after NRA caused the terror that they did in Kabamba. As it were, I have suggested that the thing is being glorified. But turns out Eli Tumini missed the shot. The guy is glorified, so the shot was missed. One. But number two, it was not as glorious as the top original NRA guys presented. It was not 27 men. Museveni and his team had been training people from the time they landed in Uganda in 1979, let alone early 78, him recruiting, particularly from the Western Axis. So these guys were fully armed, equipped, and trained, including on national resources, because many of the people who went to the initial command and officer trainings in Tanzania and many other things under the Ministry of Defense, that Museveni said, were basically on our national coffers. And so, one, so it's not glorious. And then two, J.J. Odongo, you see, is a permanent boasting person on these things. He's basically a product of terror, meaning that he was the commandant of that place. And part of the deal was that he would go down that place and then let into the NRA guys and didn't work. Turns out that the government of the day held him and he remained in prison. Had it been, until the Okellos released him, so had it actually been today under NRA, these guys would have finished him there. So there's nothing glorious, but just quickly, I really, really totally agree with Sarah that it is actually in NRA's interest to subdue these days and let it be part of history, rather than to go ahead and glorify itself, because it looks both hypocritical and in many cases possibly very tempting for people who resent this regime to seek alternatives. Generally, it's an insult to the citizen of this country.
Thank you, Honorable Ochieno. Major Awich, when you listen to Dr. Bireete here and Honorable Ochieno, they seem to downplay the significance of celebrating these 2 days, the Liberation Day and Tarehe Sita. How relevant are these days to the people of Uganda?
Now, they have downplayed it. It could be that they disagree with it in principle, but it could also be that they are not aware about what they are downplaying. If they know and they're disagreeing, then the burden is on me to convince the viewers that they should not take their line. Therefore, I try. You see, for any struggle, first of all, to succeed, they must have a cause. They must have a reason, and therefore people must support it. If you went with your tanks and helicopters, including chemical weapons, and you are fighting and just cause, I assure you, with all the technology, you won't succeed. You may try to annihilate people, but you won't. So in dialectical materialism, the test of truth is in the practice. If you think you are telling the truth that you are fighting a just cause, you have attacked Kabamba, do you succeed? I can assure you, if it wasn't worth it, it wouldn't. So by the fact that it succeeded by capturing state power, shows you the truth that was in it. Because the test of truth is in the practice. Now, the other thing is that the state machinery that governed the country at that time and thereafter was completely a state machinery that could not measure up to a national organ. You're a young man, but I can assure you that the army, which is the central organ of the state, then wherever there was a roadblock, even in Kololo, there was in a Acacia Avenue, or in Naklabi and everywhere, it was just common that the soldiers in the roadblock would tell you that Philip's identity card on one hand and money on the other for you to pass that roadblock. And they would say either in Swahili or broken English. In Swahili it is identity card kwa mkono moja, pesa kwa mkono moja. And it would be open. Not even a newspaper would write. You could see a line of 20 people or 30 like this. Identity card kwa mkono moja, pesa kwa mkono moja. Government identity card. I mean government roadblock. And you pass and hand over money and you go.
What has
Okay?
changed?
What has changed is that you don't see it. Is it there? Have you seen a roadblock saying being demanded identity card and money? Have you? Maybe I've not seen. It could be happening. I'm not aware.
No, they are not raising the hands.
Have you?
Just,
So
just,
there's
if you don't,
now,
as a matter of
colleagues,
fact, no,
when you were talking, I was taking notes.
Sorry, fair
Is
enough.
my point so intriguing? So anyway, it is good. Suppose I was talking here and nobody was concerned. It would mean I'm talking nothing. But that I talk and you are
Sorry, bro.
itching.
Sorry, bro.
That I talk and you are itching. It is sweet anyway. Otherwise, if I was talking nothing, you would sit and relax and actually ask me as if finished. Now that it itches you, it shows how much value
I
I'm putting.
appreciate that you teach their minds.
So
please.
take notes like I do when you are talking. Now, so the instrument of the state was appalling. Even as late as 85, Kampala itself as a city was divided into 5 areas. We were edging to an area of separation of Uganda. Okay? Uganda breaking into pieces. You find another army controlling Naklabi, another army controlling Muyang, another army controlling Muyang. It was a mess. But this is no more. The other aspect is Uganda as a country is kept today as one. Remember that in these years that NRM has been in power, many countries are broken. Somalia are broken, Libya are broken, Yugoslavia are broken, to the extent that I once told you that in one World Cup they were playing, that broken and remained Serbia and Montenegro. In the middle, as they qualified for quarterfinal, at home Montenegro broke off from Serbia. They said, now if you win this World Cup, where will you take it? Countries are broken. Sudan, Darfur is threatening to break. but Uganda has remained one. Finally, I can list on and on. The economy. I can assure you, now that you see advertising, which is a big business, advertisement, there are companies running advertisement. Companies spend lots of money in advertising. Coca-Cola, you can't imagine how much money Coca-Cola spends in advertising. Nile Breweries, Bell, Sugar, Kakira Sugar Work, whatever, they're all spending money in adverts. I sure in the past there was nothing to be advertised. Instead, like a beer company, you'd sit and allocate Bushenyi 300 crates, as if for donation, for buying. Sugar, you'd be allocated. Masindi will get 600 kilograms. The economy was dead, and now it is here. And the list goes on. So, in effect, what I'm saying, the 6th February, that signified the sign of the liberation and transformation of Uganda. First and foremost, you can leave the list, but first and foremost, to show you that it was genuine, the test is in success. Truth is only tested by its success. You have the weapon, you have the soldiers, you can only annihilate people. You will not succeed unless you have a just cause supported by the people. So the test of truth is in success.
Thank you, Major. And I can see Honorable Ochieno here is itching to say something about the success.
Thank you. With absolute respect, when it comes to these topics, I'm very restrained, particularly in the presence of Comrade Awich, and I'm going to declare the disclaimer. Comrade Awich has got a double interest. Comrade Awich was part of NRA, and being this space, we sometimes don't want to go so much into it. You can only go so far, or else it gets a bit personal and sometimes can get emotive. So we're very clear about that. But I'm just a little concerned that Comrade Awich has built recently some kind of a script narrative, which is an old script narrative, which failed. It was terrible, it was ungovernable, the country was divided, and that Yugoslavia was broke. So if you touch Museveni and his bunch of thieves, then the country will break up. So those kind of blackmail nonsense. One, within the last 6 weeks, an NRA soldier at a particular installation, I'll not mention it, has actually asked me for money. I was driving with a group of people in my car, and because he didn't recognize who I was, and because I chose that morning, I gave the guy money, and I'll not go into the details for these purposes, basically in the interest of public interest. Within the last 6 weeks, me plus a section of my family, I gave the NRA guy money, and when we left, just said, this guy found me in a particular time. But in any case, I sympathize with these poor little boys who are picked up and then they do whatever. And you can actually look some of them. They're actually very terrible places. Go look police installations and military installations and check what NRA found and what they did not find. These guys live in very terrible conditions. So that is one, Sarah. Number two, there is an absolute nonsense that I have to dismiss. Comrade Awich, in 1981-82, I left Miri partly because of the difficulties of my eyesight. So I left Miri and I did most of my A-level actually in Kololo High School. So in fact, the Kololo High School was actually off Acacia Avenue. I want to tell you guys, read my lips. There was no roadblock anywhere around Kololo that I know of, except at Summit View, which may still be there because that is a military installation up the hill. You know what I'm saying? One. So this idea that there was roadblocks everywhere else around Kampala is a nonsense. The other roadblock that I know up to 1985 was in Wandege. Police still put those roadblocks, and that roadblock there in Wandege was a police roadblock. Number two, don't forget that NRA guys, bandits, up to here in Nakulabi, they use every now and again to come and hit Kampala. So to present this country as it was ungovernable until Museveni came is a nonsense. Number two, that these guys went to break people's necks starting with February the 6th is another nonsense. As of February the 6th, Sarah sort of hinted on this. The government of the day was only 2 months old, hardly 2 months. In fact, 1.5 months old, the UPC government. How can you accuse that government of some of the things that these guys have listed? Government was just about settled. Maybe some appointments hadn't even been completed.
Honorable, when you
Yeah.
say that, then I want to ask,
Yeah, sure.
what inspired the NRA people to go in for this?
These
They
guys,
lost elections.
they lost elections, but before losing elections, it was very clear that they had Museveni and his group who went to Luwero had a very specific monolithic agenda, which is basically what it is at the moment. And in a particular way, there is almost I don't know how much I should say. Museveni had an agenda, had an interest, and the interest was basically to disorganize the Ugandan state and set up something akin to what they already went ahead and established, basically what it is today. They wanted an excuse. DP was a bit of their partner in this thing. And of course, they formed, they went ahead and launched their thing, and they had Buganda as a base, and Buganda gave them the good base. Good enough, yesterday I was talking to a very senior Buganda who's extremely angry, feels substantially betrayed. I have 3 Buganda personal assistants, trainee personal assistants like yourselves. And one tells me that in a family where they lost over 14 people, in the protection of NRA, they don't want to hear NRA in their family. That is it. So number 2, from 1982, so therefore, until 1985, I was in Kampala. The coup of 1985 found me in Kampala at the taxi park. The coup of NRA, these little boys, child soldiers, basically the crime Museveni committed globally and to these people, using people's sons, mainly, predominantly, to train them age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, kidnapped. We don't know what happened to their parents. That's something that we've not had as a national debate. For us in UPC, we want to try and calm it down because we want to move towards the future. I saw little kids pulling guns. 26th, 25th, 26th January, found me in Mutual Hall, Makere. It's a traumatic thing for me until today. So now, the nonsense that Kampala was ungovernable. So finally, the ungovernable thing that the script that Comrade Rich talks about, where he's right, between 1985 July and January 1986, when Museveni, DP, UFFM, these militia groups that includes NRA, fought amongst themselves after overthrowing Milton Obote's government. Yes, Kampala was a mess for that 6-month administration of Tito Okello, DP, and Museveni. They were a regime together. Museveni's side went ahead and overthrew the other. But they did not overthrow UPC government. By then, UPC government had been overthrown by a combination of them, including a few individuals in UPC. So that needs to be put in context. That is what these guys found. Between 1981 and 85 July, we were able to turn around Uganda's economy. We were able to reorganize Uganda's education, including opening up secondary schools, at least in my areas, not Bushenyi, secondary schools in every sub-county that existed at that time. Secondary schools new existing today. Reformed our health services. The essential commodities talk about, those things happened when we were fighting Idi Amin. And all of us, including Museveni, we contributed in undermining Amin's administration so that by April 1979, yes, Uganda's economy had collapsed, in part because of the war, but in part because of sanctions, and in part because of us undermining Idi Amin together with Museveni's. Obote set up a ministry for rehabilitation. I've talked about this thing, led by Masete Kwe, and to rehabilitate our industry and infrastructure. Obote also set up a ministry for supplies to deal exactly with that. So it's Commander Rich is right, that essential commodities disappeared. Those of us from Tororo used to go ahead and use...
Wasn't that caused by the Idi Amin?
Precisely, and the war, So that up to 1980, 81. But between 1981 and 85, these are myths. So these guys are continuing with these narratives, and I think they need to be challenged. And the point is, there is no need for us to hang around those things. And it's very, very misleading. And to consider that because of those, we now have people disappearing. We now have soldiers beating up people. We now have drones rolling up. And talk about break up our country. They want to blackmail people using Ukraine. Under NRA for 16 years. 16 years. Northern Uganda was at war. Actually, people were living in concentration camps, effectively, victims of NRA genocide. So I think this is nonsense presenting this conversation that way.
Thank you, Honorable. Dr. Sarah, how best can the country called Uganda protect these important marks of history in its growth, in its development? The Bush War, talk about the liberation as stated by the NRM and so many other events without necessarily having to put public money into celebrating what you call is irrelevant.
Well, for me, I cannot celebrate a people group attacking a constitutional government, attacking a national security installation. I cannot celebrate that. Whether NRM succeeded or not, I think now that maybe we need to challenge this in a courts of law. As a constitutional body, they should stop celebrating acts that are unconstitutional and spending taxpayers' money on that. Because what message are you sending? I gave an example of ADF. If tomorrow ADF captured power, do we go to celebrate the people they are murdering in Kasese, murdering where, attacking CBS? Do we go to celebrate those and make them public holidays? What is there to celebrate? Yes, maybe they thought they had a legitimate cause, but that's neither here nor there. They just wanted power. They got it. They've misused it. If Ugandans were violent by nature, we could have had several coups. That's why Awich is celebrating that Uganda is one piece. Because they know what their conduct is not different from that they thought they were challenging. So for me, we should focus on moving forward as a country and not glorify unconstitutional conduct, whether by them or any other group, for that matter. But we could also assess what is it that the NRA has delivered as an army. How far have we progressed in terms of security assessment? A secure country would have reduced incidences of attacks, of security attacks. We are still referring to incidences of yesterday. We still have skirmishes here and there. We could say the country is in one piece, but how united are we? We still need was it last year when we put at Arato 1 in Kampala? We have never known the risk that we faced that put us at Arato 1. Were they trying to overthrow each other? Because there is no known external risk. So are they now a danger to themselves? Have Arato 1 been moved? And is the country briefed, or we are still at Arato 1 in Kampala? When you're moving in the night, yes, we have images in the country where the local people would say security is guru. Lines of soldiers moving. What is it that people are threatened with? Is there anything they need to know basis? Is there anything the people need to know?
You see, Dr. Bireete, when you question the importance of having the soldiers and the military vehicles and whatsoever on the streets, Major Awich Pollar from the NRM will tell you that we have neighbors who are unstable. We have the DRC that
No,
is
let him
unstable.
say so. I'm saying, when the country was put under Karasa Arat 1, we were informed, although we are not informed, the danger we faced. So my question is, are we still under that danger?
Maybe
or
you could
not?
briefly talk
Yes,
to us.
he's taking note. No, he's taking note. The second issue is the patrols we see. What danger are we faced with? I know it's their duty to keep security, but the army on the streets means that there is a kind of aggression against Uganda, because the civilian security is kept by police, not the army. And of course, then I want to go to the fusion. The fusion between the army and the police, which should be more pro-civilians. You look at the ministry in charge of internal affairs, the minister, the deputy minister of state, the PS are all generals in the army. So the bosses of police are all army generals. Then when you go, the political supervisors are all army generals. When you go to the actual police itself, the deputy IGPs is a army man. The senior, so when you call senior management of police, 60%,
Yes.
the top management are army. So do we now have a fusion of the army and police? Can they be one entity then? Save us the burden, save us the money, save us the duplication, instead of being wheeled from here to there. Okay, if it is okay to fuse the two, can we also have police being deployed for the army? Chimaka, where? Yeah, because why? And Ugandans have watched on as this militarization, aggressively takes over. There would be civilian police. Even the crimes that you accuse now, let me say people enter here and beat us up, which is also not uncommon of the regime. Would you know who has beaten you? Sometimes they switch uniform, sometimes they take over offices openly, sometimes they take them over covertly. So why can't we have a bill in parliament that merges these entities if they are one and the same? Or if it is okay to swap, then why don't we see police also going to occupy army positions? That is the second issue for me. The third issue is technological advancement. What capacities? Of course, you'll be told some information is classified, others is not classified. But let's look at what we see as citizens. When the army is beating people, they are using sticks. So for me, that shows a rudimentary army. That in the absence of guns, they are still using a stick that I can use on my farm to interface with citizens. So how sophisticated is this army? You can picture the image that comes to mind quickly is that of the army beating former journalist Takena, who was now, who is now disabled and unable to continue his work. A huge stick like they are beating cows. And so how sophisticated are they in terms of advancement? I know they have sophisticated guns. At times you see them when they are firing what they call stray bullets sometimes. But in terms of dealing with the civil military relations, in terms of interfacing with the people, what is the public perception of this army? The public perception of highly educated army today, if you went to the streets, it has not changed from the army of Idi Amin, regardless of the levels of education between the two armies. The conduct. So Afande talked about roadblock money. So okay, they might not mount a roadblock, but police is the highly corrupt entity, the most corrupt entity. So the money is still there. So when you look at collaborations, what are the collaborations in terms of the regional security architecture? Because at one point we are in a foreign territory, fighting with a third party. The Chisangan crashes, M23 still there, Uganda's name still features. When we are crossing borders with Rwanda. So what are these collaborations? And the causes are with the army, they are not with the people.
If you don't mind, I'll give Comrade Rich an extra minute, but let me just give this so that he asks.
Oh, you are taking away.
No, just to add on to his list. So I'll do a bit of list early. On the question, the broader context of security, because it's really important. Sarah in part talks about what is the security realities. And I was just thinking, today versus then, this idea that we have armed people guiding nearly supermarkets and petrol stations, state of security, what is it? Number two, looking back to roadblocks. When I was arrested, 18 months, nearly 2 years into NRA regime, and I'm talking about NRA started their thing 2 months into UPC administration, I beat 7 roadblocks between my old Kampala location startup, I can say that for my books, into Entebbe Airport, including the last one. You can see 6 roadblocks outside the standard roadblocks that should be at other airport.
Under NRA?
Under NRA, 1987, November 22nd in the night, yes. So 7 roadblocks. So this was thing that once these guys came, it went off. It's neither here nor there. But the more important one, though, as I was trying to talk about going to Bugweri, Obote II government, and I've said it again and again, I think put in context. Ministers had a driver, a police officer, and the minister in the back. 3 people, 1 car. Similar Mercedes-Benz, except the president's vice president, and I think the prime minister had a different, the prime minister, I think they had a different vehicle. Right now, a junior minister, including an NRM secretariat staff, has got a fleet, not of vehicles, but this armed guy. So point is, what security?
The sharpshooters.
Yes. So
That
what security?
go ahead.
That one junior minister
Yeah.
has got 4 vehicles with very nasty looking kind of guys.
Sharpshooters.
Is that security? And about the 2
Thank
government,
you.
as I said, that was the thing.
Thank you.
Just compare and contrast.
Thank you so much. Major Awich, a couple of things to respond to, but keen interest to Dr. Sarah here did pull out the standby class 1 that was instituted by General Elwelu last year. I want to know whether what the threat was and whether it still stands, but also the moral conduct of the army, the beating of people, the arresting and disappearance of individuals by the army. Speak to that.
The standby is an order of the army, not civilian. You don't put civilian on standby. The nearest that you could call to civilian situation is a curfew, and we have never had a curfew. So a military standby for soldiers is not a civilian matter. It is actually an alertness of the army in particular response to an event. It can be even declared over Christmas that this is a festivity period. Many things can happen. So we are putting the soldiers on class by stand 1. Okay? We can even say there's no leave. We are not issuing leave at this time. This is a festivity period. We are doing that. So I know there was an order which came around the time I think we had Chogam in Rwanda, and that class 1 order, that order was given. But to the military,
you were protecting
alertness.
delegates.
So you normally alertness of the army is derived from intelligence gathering. So military intelligence, which is a fully fledged chieftaincy of military, gathers information, and their threats may not be divulged to us. But all in all, whatever order of standby that Sarah is saying, it's a military order. It's a military communication to soldiers, not to civilians. Civilian, the only alertness that you could put as a government, which is provided under the law, is curfew. And curfew has never been declared.
Is it not important for civilians, maybe after some time, to know the threat they were being faced with?
The threat the army is being...
Yes.
Supposed
What was it?
The army is to protect
Because
the
under
people.
NAM, we had so many delegates here during NAM 1 and G77.
So if you want to know the threats the army goes through, well, maybe the army can tell you. But the army is always constantly on information gathering, intelligence gathering to know the threats that face it. If you feel you want to know the threats that face the army, you'll be made to know. But whatever normally the army can put themselves in standby class 1, but will tell civilians to go about their life, because you don't want to even scare the population. If you know you have your system of protecting them without scaring the population. In any case, these threats would be not threatening to kill civilians, be threat to attack the barracks or threat to kill the soldier, not threat to kill civilians. So that is the standby class 1. I believe I've answered it. Now, on the other comments, Comrade Ochieno says that I am double interested or conflicted. It is true, I'm part of it, but I'm saying if somebody else defended it, I know of top people in NRM who have appeared, even on front line, and the MP for Honorable, this one of Kira, Semujuas, who asked even the Secretary General and said, you man, you don't know this thing. I was with you in Makere. You keep quiet, you don't. It is only Fonopono who came forward and said, Honorable Semuj, you are a Muslim and a strong Muslim. Were you there when Muhammad started Islam? Who says you must only defend when you're there? So, Comrade says, I'm conflicted because I was there. But even if I was not there, somebody would say, like Semuju told our colleague. So I believe I've seen it and I'm not lying. So I'm the best person to explain it. The other thing is that Congress talks about a soldier who robbed him money.
Did not rob, ask for money, and I gave willingly. Yeah.
Begging or like the roadblock
They
thing?
were asking for money, actually, the vehicle before me and my vehicle.
You see,
yeah.
that borders creativity on his side. He's just creating something for the audience, because soldiers are now not manning or guarding anywhere. Where are soldiers guarding? So
soldiers are everywhere.
Where are they guarding? Where do they stop you at a roadblock and ask money? That is a creation. I don't believe that. The other thing that I want to talk about is the roadblocks. Congress still says that there was never a roadblock. I don't know what time he's saying. Okay, maybe he would say in 85 after Lutwa took over.
87 November.
But you know that the history of roadblock dates back from overthrowing Amin, and they were not dissolved in Uganda, militant roadblock, until UPDF, NRA dissolved it. For example, Museveni himself, even while he was Minister of Defense, it is documented that he was arrested at the roadblock in Kireka, about to be killed. It is Rejema and Salim Saleh who went on a rescue mission. So if you're saying there was no roadblock, where was this? There was roadblock in Katonga, there was roadblock in Karuma, there was roadblock everywhere. In River Nile in Jinja, even in Kampala. You ask the adult, you may maybe deny to these children, but you won't.
No, I don't think it's
so
completely. They're simply saying there were roadblocks under NRA.
Where people would ask money, identity card kwa mkono moja, pesa kwa mkono moja. So it is not true to deny and rubbish that there was no roadblock. Finally, on Congress comments is that I know it gets emotional, and I think the part of the emotion makes him use the diction, the choice of words. He gets lost, and he starts using a very derogatory term, which is not a civilized word for us in the.
For example,
this rubbish or this nonsense or whatever. There's some words which you use there repeatedly. I don't remember.
Yeah,
repeatedly.
The very deliberate English language within decorum.
So for us in the civilized cadreship, we mind our diction, our choice of words, because we believe when we are here, we are discussing as colleagues. So, but if it is a motive and also part of the training of the Congress, you can choose to continue using it. Now, final about the attempt to preserve Uganda as one. Even as late as recently, you know, there were times to moot things like the Nile Republic. They even came up with a cabinet.
Kawempe Republic.
Huh?
Kawempe.
Nile Republic. Incidentally, I was also put on that cabinet.
Of what?
Nile Republic, where Mao was the president. There was also a republic created for Rwenzori region, for Kasese. So I am saying that NRM, the way Uganda is not by chance. Many people have mooted, breaking our small country. Recently, I was in South Africa about 3 weeks ago. From Joburg to where we had a meeting, it was 400 kilometers. And yet you have not even reached the other end of South Africa, northwards. That is one. You would see a Shell petrol station, Shell on the roadside. And then they put you a Shell, that the next Shell is 400 kilometers. The next Shell petrol station. Of course, there's also Total on what, but the Shell company alerts you that you are following this road, the next one is, but how was the small one? We wanted to break it. But thanks to NRM, it is one. So
Major, are you trying to justify the closeness of fuel stations in the capital city of Uganda?
The closeness?
Of fuel stations. Every 100 meters, every 200 meters, you have a fuel
We
station.
can debate that under the economic structure, whether or not is good. But I'm just saying that you can see from South Africa how big the country is. That a near petrol station, they're telling you. In Uganda, if you said Shell in Kawempe, the next Shell is 400. You may probably get it in South Sudan. But I'm just trying to tell you, it's such a big country, but we are such a small country that we even wanted to break the little that we have. So that is the point I was saying. But about Uganda now, we are very united. Sarah doubted it. We are very united. A litmus test is, if a Karamojong went to Kabale now, and is sleeping maybe in a hotel and is having a bottle of Coca-Cola in the restaurant outside, he can talk to people in Karamoja on his phone very confident, and nobody bothers. We actually come to enjoy our unity in diversity. Whether you are there and you talk, have you ever had a Karamoja in Kabale
But you
assaulted?
are from a region which is just in Guararo. Is that the
No, that is
national unity?
another thing that can be
Yeah, but this
debated.
is our,
But
our
I'm
national
saying,
context.
no,
Yes.
no. I will address that. But I'm saying the country is united.
That's a credit that should
even
be given
in
to
the
the
army,
citizens of this country,
okay?
not to any political organization.
Which one?
This thing about
Unity.
unity and
Yes.
diversity.
Oh, you see, I have repeatedly said it here that to my colleagues, when something happens in Uganda which is good, it is good. When something bad happens, it is NRM. So he's saying the unity that is there, it is good. But when if the people fight, it is NRM. For example, if Batoro, right now Batoro and Banyoro are
NRM.
living peacefully,
February
Batoro and
6th.
Banyoro are living peacefully, okay? That is good. In a par, in Acholi, where the Mahdi are fighting with Acholi, that is NRM. So when is NRM, when is God? The thing is, nothing happens in a country out of vacuum. The challenges that we have, like in APA, is a challenge that must be addressed. But nothing happens. So please, if something good happens, credit it to the country, to the government.
Thank
Okay?
you, Major.
I am about to make one or two and then end up. Give up and stop at this stage. Now, so we are united. Good enough. Congress concedes, but it concedes that it is God which has brought the unity, not NRM.
Well, God through the NRM.
God through the NRM. The other thing is night movement of troops. And then the danger. What are the dangers? You can handle them at once. Again, I take to the fact that the army collects its information and then deploys accordingly. So when you see them moving, there are threats. And that is why they will see civilian and they pass. And that's why the movement are there without curfew. Because the enemy is known. The target is known according to intelligence gathering. No curfew is issued, but the soldier will patrol. They meet civilian, you pass, you go, nothing. Okay? But now, we have dangers. For example, they were cutting of people in Masaka. You know that our troops has been operating in Somalia. Maybe the people we operate against would also have a counter tactics. So that makes us take security measures. Finally,
Major, briefly on that particular issue, maybe we discussed the supervision. These military people are in the population moving and they end up in bars. Recently, a soldier from the Special Force Command was killed in a bar.
well, the army, first of all, is recruited
By
from
civilians.
the people. The army is recruited from the people. Two, once you gather a group of people, it is challenging to lead and command. That is why we have the law, the army forces conduct, okay? Because we know put people together, commanding and managing them is a challenge. That's why we have law. That's why we have court martial. So it is not surprising that it happens. Finally, is there a fusion between the police and the army? There is no fusion. Clear distinction is in the law applicable. The only thing that brings army to police is that under the constitution, it provides that the police can call on the army to help. And these are the calling that they make, and the army comes to support. But there's no confusion at all.
Major, when you say calling, Major Tumusime Kasigazi, the deputy
He was
IGP,
called to help.
under what circumstances was he called to help the police?
The PS, who is a Major General, was he called
Major
to help?
General Abel Kandiho.
The
chief of
deployment
staff.
in internal affairs of generals, was he the police called to help?
Well, you're mixing up issues, Sarah. First of all, the civil
No,
servants
if
at
I
the
may
ministry,
put
civil
clearly.
servants at the ministry, and the political leadership at the ministry are not police. Police is defined by an act. We know who police is. You can't say the minister is a policeman.
No, let me
No.
make my point.
So don't fuse
Let
the
me
two.
make my point. My point is militarization of police, which should be closer to the people, civilian, for law and order. So the militarization is at two levels, both political supervision and technical. The political supervision is where I bring in the ministry, and it's deliberate. PS, general. Minister of State, general. Minister of Internal Affairs, general. So that is the militarization of police.
I
Both
was
at
replying
both
you.
levels.
I was replying you.
No, I wanted
now,
to clarify.
You
I'm not
clarify the
mixing.
word fusion. You use the word fusion.
Fusion is for the technical. The technical, you have a IGP, who is merely figurehead, because really, yes, so the IGP is a policeman. His deputy is a army man, general. The head of CID, army man. When you call the police, there are so many.
Chief of
Okay,
staff.
okay, fine.
Yes.
So now, the operative word in what I was addressing was fusion. And that is why, for me to discern it properly, not to cause and make the insistence of fusion look, I said, please handle political leadership separately. Now, if you discern it, then it brings us with the police per se, per definition of police. So please, the politicians, it is the prerogative of the president to appoint. He can even appoint a bishop to be the minister of internal affairs. Bishop so and so is a minister. It is his prerogative. He can appoint anybody. But so we shouldn't mix with police. Now, with police, it's a call. Those who are technically in the police as defined by law. Because the Constitution says the police can call. If you want to go to the definition of calling, but as far as we are concerned, they called them and they were seconded. In the military terms, they are called secondmen. You are not in police, but you are in a secondment for that because police wanted that resource. So you are on secondment. You are not a policeman, but seconded, attached there. And that is it. So there is no fusion whatsoever.
Major, which briefly, General Kale Kaihura was called. And, he
And
ended up
seconded.
becoming the leader.
Yes, it was called and
Who
seconded.
called him?
It
Who
is
is
the
General
police.
Katumba
Who is
Wamala
calling
called.
It is
these
the police.
people?
It is the police.
Thank you so
You
much.
check the police and check the command of police.
Thank you so much, Major Awich, for that. I want to bring in, as we come to the end of this first topic, what is the role of civil society in harmonizing such events in the country, but also making the population really be engaged in some of the activities?
Well, if we had the civil-military relations, which for my think now is part of the confidence or trust debate, the civil society role would be to enhance that, the civil-military relations. I know there are civil society organizations working on policing issues, governance, on conduct, and recently we had a convention on the status of policing in this country by the Justice Action Point. So when you don't have, because how do you enhance civil-military relations? Civil-military relations are enhanced through perception and sensitization. So what is the perception today of the police that we can't even define here? Afanda, which is saying the police has called for help for their human resource, because I think even the director of human resource, yeah, so the management is 60% army. So are you saying that the police had no capacity to get these directors from their rank and file, and they called for help? And who called for help? How, where, and when? So once you have, now which civil-military relations do you promote? This one's on call, and on call for how long? For what purpose? Yeah, but so we can't do much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah, and thank you, Honorable Joseph and Major, which Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. We're heading into a very short break, and we shall be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
You are still on Uganda's leading freedom platform, the Civic Space TV, and this is the Citizens Chat Show. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today we are analyzing the security sector, the progress in light of the 43rd Tarehe Sita celebrations, but also we're going to have a discussion about schools and school fees and school requirements in the country. The noise is too high, the concern is too much. Helping us in that discussion is retired Major Awich Pollar from the National Resistance Movement, Honorable Joaeph Ochieno from the Uganda People's Congress, and Dr. Sarah Bireete from the Center for Constitutional Governance. Honorable Joaeph, as you conclude, what is the role of opposition political parties, and for that matter, the UPC, in harmonizing events like Tarehe Sita in the country?
I think it's very difficult yet to bring in political parties here. This date was a sad day for the country, which was basically used to kill democracy in the country, because I said democracy was 2 months old, and NRA decided to launch a terror war, a war of terror, which 43 years on continues to raid the country. But as I say, it does a matter of interest as you conclude this topic, because I know you want us to move on to other things, but it's important. Come to think of it, I was just thinking during the break that then what liberation indeed are we celebrating amongst everything, having said about everything else. Just the other day, I think 2 days ago, we see a serving Army General, Mr. Museveni, who happens to be Mr. Museveni's son, launching a political organization. Now, is he a general of NRA? Is he part of Museveni's family? Is he part of NRA, NRM? What made him? What machinery? What basis? And I'm flanked by 2 lawyers here. I think they really need to be able to guide, particularly the youth for citizenry in this country as we conclude this topic, because it's extremely important. And in any case, it's predominantly about public resources. I talked about this young man when he offered to rescue Kampala streets with tarmac. It hasn't yet happened post-NAM, but I was wondering that even if he did, since when did Muhoozi become an engineer? But that's neither here nor there. But number 2, even as we continue to ask, particularly for you younger guys, the contextual history, Comrade Awich was trying to talk about me getting emotive about it. I actually get traumatized about it rather than emotional, because I'm genuinely very much worried about the future citizens of this country, the former narrative that should be able to take us forward. And so for that reason, again, I think Mr. Museveni has his own truth about this matter that even Comrade Awich would not contest with, because in any case, his own mustard seed, which a fantastic guy called Norman Tumembizi wrote Unmasking the Mustard Seed. So in itself, it's got several editions that talk about messaging. But as I understand it from colleagues, and I think that Sarah might actually have an idea about this, there are several people who've written books about our history, and every book you read has got a different version. That's amongst NRA, not UPC. Museveni's version is different. Kazora is different. Pecos Cortez has got a different version. Besigye has got a different version. Chaligonza has got a different version. And there is someone else.
And they are talking about the one who...
Ondoga Riamaza. Ondoga.
Also, he has his own version.
Ondoga is the 7th. There's another one. So, the correct... Yeah.
What war are we talking about?
What are we talking about? So really...
you can let me answer if you want. I can answer.
In any case, Comrade Awich should possibly help us with that. Generally, whatever happens, it was an attack on democracy, attack on our national integrity, attack on our national unity. And I must also say that the Luweero thing that was launched, it was launched basically purely based on an identity thing. And part of the narrative that NRA built, although I didn't really want to go heavy on it, it was basically presented as a war against the other. Wuno Uyumuchori Umunyanya, things like that. And it worked very, very comfortably for the people in Uganda who had their own grievances, part of which may or may not necessarily have been legitimate. So it was very divisive to the extent that it is still on today. And that's why on this program we talked about it when we're discussing Balalo and Buganda, and you look back at what happened in the 80s. NRA is the one that has actually sowed seeds of confusion, seeds of disunity in this country, and seeds of tribalism, where at the moment you can talk about ethnic division, where the privilege of top positions in government, not only is it that, as Sarah says, 60% of the top guys in the army, the police are from the army, check out of those 60% where they come from. Just likewise, you can actually talk about top executive of this country and check that some of them come from a particular sub-county. But when we give credence to Ugandans in terms of nationality, we are rubbing beyond NRA, simply saying whatever happens about NRA or anything else, we need to be able to focus that you, the young guys in the country, we need to be able to work together in building one united country.
Thank you so much, Honorable Joseph, for that decent submission and conclusion to the subject of Tarehe Sita.
I was supposed to comment about the book, the different writings.
Okay, briefly, Major, in a minute.
Now, first of all, I like to say that there are many things that inform writing about the same subject matter. All these people wrote about the war. President Museveni wrote the mustard seed. It was Ondoga Uriamaza who came second. Museveni's long march from statesmanship, from guerrilla to statesmanship. And it's a very rich book. You better read it. It's a must read because Ondoga was a genius. So many people have written now. If you look at the New Testament is the part of the Bible which talks about from the birth of Jesus up to now. Many people have written, but different accounts. Even on the matter of changing water to wine, Matthew writes with variation. Mark writes with variation. Luke writes with variation. But they are writing about the same thing, the account of Jesus. So it shouldn't be surprising that the war comes and people write differently. So it now calls about writing style. People have different writing style. Others write in first person singular, others write otherwise. So why would it worry us about the book? The other point is the size of the struggle. The struggle was so big. You couldn't have seen everything everywhere. Okay? Besigye was in high command with the medical unit. People like Pecos Kutesa was in a combat unit. So what Kutesa saw in the combat unit may not be whatever Besigye saw. So why are we worried about the many books?
It's about specific facts.
Then the other thing is capacity of the writer. Many of these people are different. By the way, there's also Brigadier General Katerima. Katerima also wrote. So Katerima is thanks God, is an OB of the great Ntare School, but he holds a degree in science, in agriculture. He has a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture. So all these guys have different capacities and exposition, and therefore all saw it and could want to put it in their perspective. So I shouldn't see a big thing about the many books. After all, even New Testament wrote about Jesus in different ways.
Okay, just maybe Afanda Wichi, if you refer the New Testament to really the controversies.
But changing water to wine.
Yes, so
water to wine.
Did anybody write otherwise? All the books say Jesus at the wedding in Cana turned water into
and
wine.
This one of
Did
ours.
anybody ever say he turned water into beer? Not wine.
Give the similar example, the contradiction here.
Yes,
what contradiction is
the
here?
message.
No, there's no contradiction. Only that people say it where he was at that time and what he saw. And as I told you, the struggle was big. Somebody who was in the medical unit like Dr. Besigye would not be talking about the same thing. Like
he knew the wounded.
Pecos. Yes, but he will concentrate about the wounded. Pecos Kutesa may not talk about the wounded. After all, in a war, those who are wounded are always evacuated. So there is no big fuss about the many books. People saw it differently. In fact, in Pecos Kutesa's title, the way I saw it, Pecos Kutes's book is even specific, the way I saw it. It doesn't mean he saw it the same way Dr. Besigye saw it, the same way Museveni. So the books are written about the same event.
Thank you, Major, and perhaps we shall wait for your own edition to tell us the facts
By
yourself.
the way, one of us have surprised us has written. In fact, for me, I'm supposed to go for organizing the launch. Kopolun Circle was a Kadogo we are together. Kopolun Circle is the only Kadogo so far to have written a book.
Thank you. Now, gentlemen and lady, we are shifting to another subject, which is education in this country. And key to that is the remuneration to schools, the money parents pay to schools, the requirements schools ask from students that parents have to take to school. And there was a debate in Parliament where members of Parliament were saying schools have gone out of hand. Today, a decent secondary school charges anything between 2 million Uganda shillings to 4 million Uganda shillings. And that money is not what an ordinary parent in this country can afford to pay for 3 months in school and coupled with other requirements. I want to start with you, Dr. Sarah, who has been through almost everything academics. Who and how should the academic sector, in terms of money being paid to the institutions, to the schools and the requirements, who should regulate them and how much should it be?
Well, education by nature is a social good which is a necessity for equality, because it's the only training that can retool and equalize society through competencies and opportunities. So when you have education in the hands of private operators, bringing in but then before I go to privatization, let me look at the government. What does government provide for the sector? Because the primary duty to educate children of this nation is the duty of government. You have schools that have no structures. You have schools where you find several times we saw in media, this school has no toilet, this school, we see some in banana leaves. You have schools without places for teachers. Some schools, you see that the areas of convenience is the bush for both the learner and the teacher. Then you come to the A-class schools, where you find that generally the desks are all present. What does this say? It shows that we are entrenching inequalities through a tool that should be taking away inequality. But it's right embedded. Inequalities are right embedded in our education system. So if you can afford normal schools, then your children will will access normal or a semblance of quality education. And if you cannot, then your children are condemned to becoming or remaining the lower class of society. So education does not now become an equalizer anymore. If your child is going into that ramshackled banana leaf school with 1 or 2 teachers, it's highly unlikely that they will make it to higher levels of learning. So you are training those kind of children to become servants of the children in schools. You are training these kind of children to go and become maids in the Arab world that are being battered. So that alone is fundamentally wrong. All government schools should have the same minimum functions. When you look at and comparing with the previous regimes, really, you can say now the only thing that has changed maybe is the number. And I know NRM loves boasting about the numbers. Somebody can say, in 1980, we had these schools. Now they have multiplied. But what is the quality? So what do we provide for government schools? We provide the human resource, which are the teachers. We provide the capitation grant for chalk and the teaching materials. That's why at primary level you have 20,000 per year. At secondary level about 125, and then at high school level 245 or about there. So if this child goes to school, there's a teacher and there's chalk. That's why you see teachers teaching under trees. There are fewer schools that have received grants for classroom blocks. It's not uniform application. There are fewer schools that have got a grant to put up a decent toilet. You have other schools whose playgrounds have been grabbed, especially in Kampala, Wakiso and Mukono. So there is no creativity, there is no physical activity for these children, because the playgrounds, including Nakasera, I think was among the last playgrounds to be grabbed by the land grabbers in government. So you have, this is the status now of government education. We have about 60% of education offered by private actors. The private actors, for them it's a business. I have invested in land, in buildings. I have my teachers. I must get a profit out of investment. How do I get a profit? There was a year when it was rumored that some schools pay UNEB to perform better. Among them in the rumor was Chitende. I don't know how far true it was. Chitende says by then was the biggest crowd puller in private schools, because everybody knew you sent, and they used to have 100% or 80% enrollment for government. So he said in universities, before pre-entry to law school, Chitende was dominating the low entry. So parents were running there because then your university, your child is sorted. And as a result, you see this competition now of schools to cheat, because performance makes the business move. They are business oriented, they are profit oriented. That's what drives them to cheat, so that they will make the news and they can attract much more at enrollment level, hence increasing profit. So if this is now the structure of education system in the country, what is the role of government? What should be the role of government? The role of government should be heavy on regulation and control, quality control. How do you ensure quality in both private and public education institutions? How do you regulate these malpractices for those who are profit-driven? How do you check that? So for me, this is the biggest debate that we should be having. We are tackling the tail end of the symptoms at school fees level. But how about this problem that I've described? Parliament is not debating this. Yes, there is a crisis, as Monta reported yesterday or the other day, at the stress parents are going through. All of us know what's happening with, one, the shrinking economy and the jobless economy. Even when government is posting growth, the growth of economic growth of government is just a paper thing. Maybe for those who access free money from the treasury. But any private actor, private sector, farmers, NGOs, private lawyers in private practice, there is no money. So when government says we have 3%, we have overperformed, the figures that URA are telling them, you are lying. You know, when we were children, we used to say that when you abuse somebody using a finger, the other four are looking at you. I know NRM uses this sign, but it used not to be a good sign because it can also be abusive. But the other four are pointing at you. So when as the technocrats are saying, we have the flowers in terms of the economy, but what is the database at URI? Shortfalls in billions of money, 300 billion. plus every quarter. So where is the growth that cannot translate into revenue? When you go at the unemployment, and I know it's the same month of graduation, the same growth is jobless. The youth have nowhere to go. So what are the symptoms of economic growth in a nation? Growth should have money in people's pockets, especially private actors should create jobs for young people and should increase revenue. Our growth is none of the above. So that's why I think that it is a lie.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bireete, for that comprehensive overview of the education sector. I want to involve you, Major Awich Pollar. Education. The parents in northern Uganda, the parents in Nagongera, where the Honorable Joaeph Ochieno comes from, can they afford school fees at King's College Budo, school fees at Nabisunsa Girls, school fees at Kampala parents? What do they do?
Well, I still think education is an area of challenge by our government. I would maybe be sat down and taken through by education technocrat from the Ministry of Education. Of course, as a government or a party, ruling party, we tried out UPE and USC. I was talking to the ambassador of Japan, who incidentally we share the wall. We share a wall at the office. I went to pay a courtesy call on him. He was explaining to me his views, his philosophies, and that of Japan, of the importance of educating lower education than putting money at the university. Says the experience in Japan is that if you put education at lower level, the GDP will increase. So we put in UPE with the hope that we educate more people for free at universal primary education. Of course, it meets its challenges that the president talked about. Some parents opted to put it aside and pay fees. Others introduce what is called the unseen cost. The unseen cost. Bring this much, bring this money, bring this. In fact, many people have defeated UPE by creating boarding sections because they know if children are coming from home, there's no way you're going to justify an additional cost. Very many schools which were not boarding schools introduced a boarding section because it is easy to do UPE and put cost. So UPE was challenged. Same thing with USC. So on record, we have many students at enrollment stage, and we have many students who manage to go through the cycle, although a big percentage of dropout is still there. So we as a country, as a party, or as a government, can count on that quantitative achievement. And indeed, as Sarah says, it is more quantitative than qualitative. Because I think some research were done on literacy and numeracy. And the research proved that the literacy and the numeracy, literacy meaning reading and writing, and the numeracy meaning the ability to count and add, were low. So if we were to go by that research, then it is a challenge that we need to address. I know as government we are going to try to address. So education is considerably, in my opinion, a challenge. I know the Congress and we may want to put it in a more harsh term, but in my opinion, like I've always considered corruption to be a challenge. I think education is a challenge. Then why is it like this? What is my view? My view is when World Bank introduced liberalization, it is where we went wrong. World Bank in liberalization meant reduce government hands in social sector. Health, liberalize health, reduce government expenditure. Education, give it to the private sector, reduce government one. So all these social amenities, when the World Bank liberalization came, it brought a mess. Remember, the liberalized economy is God for us all, each for himself. And that is the principle of capitalism. Okay? God, it is only God for us but each for himself. So liberalization over-penetrated education sector. I like to give this example. I studied from Ankole, particularly in Tarehe School, and I've been chairman all boys of Tarehe School for 2 Kisanja, 2 terms. I'm honored.
You
that
didn't live to the term limit.
No, we don't even have term limit. I could have continued, but I chose to leave it to Honorable Elioda.
Good.
I chose to leave it to Honorable Elioda.
Yeah,
You know,
but-
Elioda was the Minister of Health and Minister of Science. And at one time, our good OB held 2 constituencies at a go. So I left the chair to him after my 2 terms. What am I saying about this? I'm saying to import the fact that I know education in northern Uganda and I know education in southern part of the country. Because as chairman, all boys interact with the board of governors, with the PT and everything. So I know it. Now, I like to give this example. At a primary school, though, there's a school in Umbara near Bank of Uganda, near prisons. I think it's called Umbara Municipal.
School.
Then you have a school in Lira, like Adiel Primary School. Both 2 schools are in the city, and they're all primary schools. If you take from the expenditure point of view, and you say per child, divide, per child, what did a school like Umbara spend in a term, and what did a school in Lira spend per child in a term? This average, I'm counting money spent whether on toilet papers or chalk or chai or anything. You will realize that a school in Umbarara spent possibly 15 times a school in Lira on average. So if you have a school spending this much, do you expect the output to be the same? It's such a challenging situation. So you can't, you go and see a DL primary, look at their PLA results in a city. Go and look at Mbara Municipal in a city. So there's a lot of inequality in education that needs challenge. I was also thinking, like Sarah was thinking, do we need a regulatory system? Can't this quality assurance, there's quality assurance in education. Does it only have quality assurance in terms of inspector of schools, whether the teachers are in the classroom, the subjects being taught, whether you have covered the syllabus, or it could go to quality assurance, including regulation of expenditure or school fees? Because there's a minimum. If we already have a minimum in terms of syllabus, can't we attempt the minimum? Must it be that another school can sleep on a six size bed, and therefore justifying that for us here we sleep on a 6x6 bed, for you there you sleep on a 4x2? Can't there be uniformity? Because these are the ingredients that causes cost to go up. So we may need to call on cost regulatory authority. Minimum can be set. Minimum can be set so that we have
But
it.
based on what? How do you
I
set
said
the
minimum can be set. Sarah, where problems exist alongside solutions. Even HIV AIDS that we say there's no medicine is just because our mind has not yet clicked it. Problems are there must be a solution. Failure to get a solution is a challenge to the problem holders. I am not prescribing a solution yet, but even HIV AIDS, there's a solution. One time, our human mind will click it. So what I'm saying is, problem identified is problem half. Once we have identified that there's a problem, by mere identification, you have a half it. How you'll get a solution is another stage. So the problem exists in as far as equality in education is concerned. Solution, I don't know. But problem identified is problem I have. So we have that. And then you have, of course, the problem of cheating that Charles says. If I want many parents to enroll in my school next year, the only thing I have to show is not even the smartness of children. It's not even the health of children, how they look in the face. It's the results. So anybody will do anything to produce results. And maybe this quality assurance should also check on that. Anything. I know UNEB has its methods and all this. So the only way these customer care relationship schools are, who are actually not more of education, is attracting enrollment. You attract enrollment, and the only way you attract enrollment is actually not how much you do in sports. Sports is, by the way. It's not how much the children are smart in uniform. It's not how much they look. It is how much you produce in results. And anybody will go to any extent to do that. So my view is that education is greatly compromised by the liberalized policy, and to the extent that the liberalized policy by IMF World Bank brought its devil. By the way, I keep saying this. If you drive at night on Speak Road, you find women who sell themselves. Do you know that before the liberalized economy, there was nothing like that? There was nothing. There were no.
So that is a credit to UPC.
There was no. I don't know where credit is, but all of us got that conditionalities with pain. But there were no prostitutes on the street before the economy was liberalized. Once you liberalize the economy, everything goes with a fee. For example, where even look, even where city toilets would be managed and for free, you are most likely going to find toilet where you pay. The education that we are talking of, you pay. So everything becomes money. God for us all, each for himself. Two, the mindset, social aspect. What is social is what all of us, for example, morals. What is morally right is what each of us think is wrong. But if you bring a private economic structure, plant it there, what is right for me may not be right for him. And that's why women said, what is right for you? What is morality about marketing myself? If you don't want to market yourself, it is up to you. Me, I will go to Speak Road. That morality, you lose it when you bring a liberalized economy. It dies. So we are really suffering from all these aspects. And I must concede, maybe I'll share with my colleagues, that there's challenge in education. I rarely share with them, but
much.
Just a question.
Thank
for,
you so much.
For Awich, briefly on liberalization. All sectors were liberalized, but it's rare to get a Chikuvo businessman to start a hospital because of the conditions required for one to start the same. You must prove professionalism, the professional requirements. So why didn't we liberalize education in a way we liberalized health? Because not any Tom, Dick, and Harry can start a hospital. At least you must have partners who are qualified.
are you saying that to start education there is conditions?
No. And why aren't they there?
Oh, I thought you were saying
No, there are
is.
no conditions.
There are no conditions.
Anybody can start a school. And
I've already suggested that there should be regulatory system. And I've said there is education standard unit in the Ministry of Education. But that standard unit needs to be revised because the current standard unit deals with inspection in terms of teachers' presence in class, maybe teacher-children ratio, maybe attendance. Do teachers come in class? Maybe do they cover syllabus? They really narrowed the term quality. So if we are to take that, because we are now downsizing authorities anyway, I don't want to advocate for creating another one, but we can still increase the size of standard education standard inspectorate to cover much more, including that. Me, I simply said, problem identified is problem half. I did not offer any solution.
Thank you so much, Major. Honorable Chen, the good Major agrees today that there is a challenge. Advise him how the UPC did it then and perhaps how it would have done it in 1990 if it was still in power.
These guys can't be advised.
I'm ready for your advice.
These guys can't be advised. I want to carefully advise the citizens of this country that we need to work well, come together, mobilize, organize, and for those who are still sleeping in the Were bushes, Nakaseke, to wake up as a country. And we say very honorable to NRA that after 38 years, you guys are tired. Mr. Museveni, you're an old man and tired. Please retire so that we're able to get a fresh alternative government with fresh sets of policies, ideally UPC, but does not necessarily have to be, so that somebody, some groups of people can start something else that will include rescuing education of this country. Comrade Rich makes a very important point that this is all really due to IMF structure adjustment program that Museveni voluntarily took the citizens of this country to go ahead and buy it. And to that extent, therefore, it's not IMF, but it's NRA and Mr. Museveni absolutely responsible for this. The contradiction, though, is Comrade Awich must be in a very difficult position, but he's a very, very nice guy today to concede with humility. And that is to find a allegedly revolutionary organization that sings and dances with the IMF and World Bank on the basis of the programs, including on the very critical thing, which is the number one equalizer in society, and that's education, is shocking. Look, education appetite exists in this country as a matter of reality. Had education been in this country in the 60s, the manner in which it is today, Museveni would not have been known beyond Barra. Because to the best of my knowledge, he can now write the 9th edition of his master's seed and show cause and evidence of how wealthy his parents were. Museveni would not have been known beyond Barra. Because definitely, if he was lucky to be helped into Tarehe School, he would certainly not go beyond Tarehe School and Barra High, and definitely go to Dar es Salaam University, get the qualification and come back. Comrade Awich is absolutely right. When you do the comparisons between Barara School and Lira, but of course without details of why it is the case that schools in Barara spend after 15%, 15 times more than the school in Lira. Of course, we know the reasons. It is basically part of what we were discussing much earlier. So NRA is a national disaster, and that's why we want to repeat, this 6th of February thing and NRA Day thing. These are days which are always an insult to citizens of the country. They should actually be criminalized even in our texts. But whatever the case, the one thing that has not been mentioned is as simple as this, Clara. It's purely, you and I were having a conversation the other day, it's basically merely funding. The number one thing is funding. We can have inspectors, we can have parents go to steal, we can have corrupt ones doing whatever, it's funding. But anyway, it's a bigger structural things. What UPC government did was to provide a holistic, universal, free schooling, education from from primary 1 to university, except that in primary and senior 4 was not fully free at the time. Meaning that education in this country holistically was free. Primary education was substantially subsidized, but not free. Up to senior 4 was substantially subsidized, but not free, in that sense. The rest of education, if you finish PLE and you want to go to grade 2 teacher training, it was free. If you want to go to a nursing course, free. The same thing with all of education. That is how powerful UPC did it. We used it using predominantly locally generated resources, and we created the economy that we do have today. When I started primary 1, the primary school two teacher and a husband, I think was teaching P6, they came from West Nile, from Arua. They could afford to come because the appointment was central, national, and it was that so good that a primary teacher could leave Arua, go and teach in Barara, and they could afford to sustain themselves. The remuneration, the economy, the power of the economy, that is the time that these guys are trying to present as if it was a streetwise kind of stuff. In my primary 2, my teacher was from Busia. Lucy Hageg, I'm busy looking for her still, if anybody knows. My brother qualified as a grade 3 teacher in the first instance. His first primary school was in Jero Primary School. The next primary school was actually Idudi, St. Joseph's in Busesa, near where NRA the other day went to insult poor Basoga on the Tarehe Sita Day. What does it mean? It means, we talk about national integration, national unity, whatever. Sarah, the point is this, that Nakasero Primary School got monies that it was due. Nagongera Boys Primary School got the monies that it was due. All the textbooks, all the scholastic materials that Nakasero, Kitante, Chinoni, Nagongera, Adiel, Aduku, you got the books that you needed, you got the staff that you needed, you got the teachers that you needed, you got the teaching, the non-teaching staff that you required as a school. Government was paying for them, but the salaries were so sufficiently competitive, meaning therefore the conditions for education were such that it was fully universal and across the country. Meaning you may choose to go and teach in Bushenyi because you want to be near Berenyanje, or you can choose to go and teach in Musoga because you like Mboli, like I went to meet things like that. And it was the case. Why? Government funding. Now, the inspectorate that we're talking about is neither here nor there, by the by. Yes, school inspectors went, and I could remember, particularly my primary school, these guys were czars that were actually feared. But to the extent, I also remember the headmaster would walk around to try and come and check, if the teachers were teaching. And sometimes if he comes and finds the teachers not there, he would go in there. And, so there was a system that works. I'm trying to say the mess in the education system at the moment is a statutory mess that is basically a manifestation of the bigger malaise, as Sarah was saying. Now, do we go and say we put a ceiling? I think to an extent, yes. A regulatory system in which you say Nabisunsa girls can pick and choose how they charge parents and which parents go there. The trickiness is the liberal element that Comrade Rich is talking about. How do you go to Nabisunsa and tell them that, well, you cannot charge beyond 2 million Uganda shillings, when perhaps the cost of boarding in Nabisunsa, the cost of beans and the cost of posho is such that imperatively, and Sarah is a senior leader in a major national school. You mind me mentioning it?
No, I can mention.
Sarah is chair of a board of PTA, in the posh King's College, Budo. So some of these are the strategic major
You're a
decisions.
chairperson, PTA.
Vice chairperson.
Vice chairperson, effectively, acting chair. Yes. So these are decisions that these guys would normally find. In the UPC times, these things would not arise. Scholastic materials, classrooms, and day-to-day equipment, teachers' salaries. If you're a teacher in Kampala, you've got your rates, and your rates are standard. There's what they call in UK they call it London waiting, city waiting. So your salaries in Kampala, you'll have an additional element because it's urban and maybe far. Hard to reach places, maybe like in Kotido, you've got extras because you want to get attract teachers from elsewhere. But all the teachers had access to teacher accommodation. Number one. Number two, then there's this the playground thing. What Museveni did with Shimoni, and Museveni, you better go and what Museveni did he kills a public school, Shimoni, both the primary school and the teacher training school, and he puts, by the way, who owns that kingdom thing?
Sudir.
Every time I pass down there, I feel trauma. Sudir, you're a decent Ugandan citizens, but know that when I see kingdom, I see that, and it's a very serious national thing. So you do that. Now, I'm even shocked about in Nakasero primary school and playgrounds. Traditionally, schools both private and non-private. You can't have a school without a playground.
Guru Valley and the Red Valley primary schools, Nachuvu, they've been good.
Can you imagine? Yes. And as Sarah says, some of these things happened. The country took it as if normal. Your generation don't know what we know. Unfortunately, many parents of Sarah's grade, people who follow my generation a bit, some of them may actually not know and they may not see the dangers of what we're trying to do. That's why I'm trying to say that NRA cannot sort it. It basically needs an overhaul, and NRA will not do it. It needs a new government. Finally, I repeat this because the discussion we're having. Sarah, I was able to walk barefoot from Nagongera, go to St. Joseph's Primary School, and nearly get 100% in maths in my PLE. Number one. Meaning I missed one by chance, just one question. I think it was just an error. Human error. I was just excited. Number one. Number two, I sat in the class with the best people in the country. He had come from, he's actually a guy from the West. He had come from Nakasero Primary School. 6 years earlier, the best people in national exams had come from Nagongera Mahanga Primary School, a new school that had just been built complete in the mid-60s. Now, today, that is actually impossible. Now, one of the reasons that brings what Comrade Witt might call my emotions, when I look through all those and I see the West's of opportunities, and I see the appetite, particularly in education, and then in this case, economic terms, and how this thing becomes a roller coaster, I get worried. Where my grandchildren are absolutely fantastically safe and okay and privileged, and my children by and large, and possibly the children of all of us here, but amid these difficulties and struggles. But what about the majority of 90% of Ugandan children, Ugandan parents? It's atrocious.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Sarah Bireete, I want us to discuss school requirements. You go to a school and a child is supposed to pay Board of Governors fees, PTA fees, construction fees, computer fees, compound cleaning fees. You bring remove paper, brooms, toilet paper, books. Some village schools ask for, I saw a school recently asking students to come with a hen at school, each student to bring a hen.
I saw something on social media that some students were asked for papers.
Seriously?
Yes, papers,
I don't know.
bricks, bags of cement. Schools asking for everything.
That's terrible. Sarah, if I may just help you here before you come in. Actually, very interestingly, to just balance and comment, which you'll be delighted to hear this. Actually, PTA, some of those have always been traditional. Things like PTA and what else? The first two you mentioned?
Board of Governors.
I think mainly PTA. I'm not sure about Board of Governors, but PTA has always been there as part of a parental contribution, but normally very minimum fee traditionally anyway. The rest are basically what I'm trying to say. Funding.
Before I come to your question, I want first state that the biggest scandal of the year was a mention that about 1 million runners cannot be traced during the release of UPE results. Then also the debate, just today in the newspapers, UNEB is defending themselves about a suspected ethnic twist in the results. Yeah, but because people are questioning why the traditional Kampala Mukono Wakso schools were defeated by Ntunga Mumbarara Bushenyi. Could there be a ethnic marking, a ethnic twist? And they are explaining. So these are the dynamics of education today. Extremely unfortunate. Extremely unfortunate that the Ministry of Education has no capacity to trace the learners whose biodata is collected upon enrollment. So I don't know what that standard unit you're talking about is doing. If you have a policy of UPE, because my understanding of UPE is that even the vulnerable, children from vulnerable homes should be able to access education as an equalizer.
And that was the emphasis anyway.
Yes. So if you have UPE, for the benefit of viewers, UPE is universal primary education. We also have universal secondary education. Why don't you focus on this 50% school dropout rate? Because it's 50% at primary, 50 to 70, I think 70 was the highest, normally 50%. People who enroll and those who sit PLA. 30% at O level and a bit of 17% at A level. Why don't we trace and make sure we skill our population? Everybody's biodata is collected. Even in a day keeping center, the name of the child, date of birth, father, mother, with their contacts. Why can't you trace such people? What else do you need? Beyond that, we put the national IDs of the parents. So how? How can we fail to trace runners? So that for me, this background now, and I'm yet to see. Of course, I'm not saying Ntunga shouldn't have become the best, but when you have a Minister of Education and her district is the best, and then the result cry. And Ntunga has not been known for two things, performing best. Also, the other thing, on the other flip side, is coffee. Then now they are number one. So, but that's, go back to your question.
Please.
Yeah, so when the requirements for schools, PTA, what does PTA fund do? At least for a school where I am privileged to sit on the same body, PTA fund is used to mitigate the crisis of discriminating remuneration by government. Government passed a ridiculous, among other things, so I'll come to government passed a ridiculous policy of remunerating science teachers way above arts teachers, creating a crisis even for headmasters and making schools ungovernable. So in the PTA where I see it, we part of PTA money is used to make sure teachers are remunerated equally. Because they all study equally. You either have graduates, you either have postgraduates, or you have diploma holders, and that should be the standard of remuneration, not the color of clothes that you wear, not the subject. Even they teach the same hours per week. So then why do you base on? That's very ridiculous for NRM, and that is the major distortion and crisis in schools. The second function for PTA funds is for a contribution to health scheme, the health. Because we have a crisis of access to health. So the health insurance scheme, which most schools have, I know that the things I'm discussing will be unheard of for foreigners who are studying in ramshackled banana leaves as a makeshift structures. So because this doesn't apply, whatever I'm saying doesn't apply, and I'm fully aware of those contradictions. So that is another issue we are looking at, plus the maintenance of because we take care of the welfare of teachers, learners, and mitigate issues, because it's parents, teachers association. Mitigate issues and concerns of the parents to the school. When it goes to the board of trustees are the owners of the school. They are the policy makers for the administration to implement. But above all, the Education Act specifies all these rules, and the bodies exist, even including the Students' Guild for the case of higher education, but at lower level you also have the prefects. So there is a small fund also for the students' leadership body in all learning centers. So when it comes to other requirements, including where I saw pavers, really asking people to carry pavers, I hope it was a joke. So most schools at different levels of development, like I said, the structure. The structure, so you have to look at the hardware and software of schools in a way to offer, in a good condition to offer quality education. Some schools don't have classrooms, so they are constructing. Some schools have old buildings. I know that during the inquiry, our school was on the spot saying, now at King's College, why increase fees? But the buildings in King's College are more than 100 years old. So do you want us to be in a school where buildings are going to collapse on our students, on our children? To say that these are not the school you don't construct? But is 114 years old. So are you saying there's no need for construction? No, there's need.
You see, Doctor, the argument is, if you have a school, or Honorable Ochieno there has a school, and invites parents to bring their students, is it the duty of parents to construct that school, or the duty of the investor?
Let me first explain, because I'm coming from a would-be government school that doesn't get any support.
And that's primarily
but that doesn't get any support from government other than the remuneration of teachers. And the teachers are also, the teachers on government payroll are also about 60%.
Actually, for him, he has talked of an investor, not even government.
But I'm talking of government, the reality
Yes,
now.
ask for investor.
I'm saying, let me first explain the reality. So you're talking of, government does not cover 100% bills of teachers, leave alone the disparities. So you find there are teachers on government payroll, there are teachers on self-recruitment of schools. So also that is a need for in the schools. Because the way MPs are talking, it's as if government is playing a role. My point is that government does not play a role beyond chalk and the teachers, and also not 100% teachers' salaries. So then the school where you have a private investor. My view of a private investor would be that you don't send students for papers. do your investment. Then charge the students. But also, then how do you control fees? If I'm saying I'm putting up a 3-storied, 4-storied building, should that burden be borne by parents, or they should be borne by an
Those who are
investor?
capable will come. Those who don't will go.
Will go away.
That is a liberalized
But
economy.
you see now, that's where
No,
we are saying
no.
we are educating, we are creating a class society, entrenched disparities. Because there should be minimums. How do you get licensed as a school without structures? So if you have structures that can accommodate 3 classes, you'll be licensed for that level. When you invest and you finish, then you will get licensed for other classes. How do we do the licensing? Don't we inspect what is available? For me, that would be my
Do you mind
approach.
me, actually, before
Thank
Comrade
you.
Awich comes in?
Briefly.
And that's actually where regulation is extremely important, Comrade Awich. In developed democracies, and including the most conservative and right-wing societies where the market is playing a role in private schools. If you're going to open up a school, part of what Sarah was saying, if you're going to open up a school, you must present a business plan. If you open up a school, you must ask for planning permission for the building to prove that you've got a school that is structures that a system that qualifies to be a school. That's part of what she's saying. Number 2, you're able to prove that, well, there may be 6 classrooms, double streams each, the laboratories, the other facilities, the toilets, and all this kind of stuff, teaching, staff quarters, for argument's sake, playgrounds and things like that, and a government ceiling that you may not be able to charge over a certain amount of money, because you're presenting a business plan that must include the fact that you're able to make profit without being exorbitantly exploitative. That is absolutely the role of the state, and states do that even in the most developed economies.
Yeah, thank you, but still basing on that particular issue, do you then think there will be a willing investor to put up such a school in Nagongera?
That is a fantastic point. Do you know what?
I thought it was still my time.
On the basis of what actually he was saying much earlier, the alternative to the NRMS of education is invest in public education. And you know what? In our times, in my time, the public schools were so good that actually usually people who were going to private schools were perceived to be not competent enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
it's basically that. At that stage, if they're parents of privilege who live near Kitende and they think that they want to take their children to a private funny place in Kitende, let them take their children to Kitende, particularly if they will fail to get the grades that takes them to Budo anyway. But that will be their business. But even then, there's still a statutory and a local government obligation to make sure that whatever goes in that school is monitored.
Thank you so much. Major Awich, a few days ago, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health was in Parliament on the budget discussions, and she did propose that government should construct boreholes in hospitals to provide water because government is unable to pay water bills. Is it such so that government is unable to provide facilities, the education, the water, the classrooms, the remuneration for teachers, like Dr. Sarah said? Is government incapable of providing this?
You see, government ability to make provisions is determined by the resource envelope. And resource envelope is determined by the revenue collection and other source of money that you can get from outside. So PS being an accounting officer, I think she has envisioned all that. Because if you have been accounting officer over 5 years, you can estimate government resources. So in our view, government resources have over and again been challenged in water. Toilet, and hospitals use a lot of water because it's supposed to be a very clean place if you're using it in toilet system. So sometimes water disappears because bill is not there. I think if there was a borehole, at least it would be what? It would be met. Now, I have a few comments about this thing that we have had. First, education is, by the way, we're doing well despite challenges. Although I know we could do better, I congratulate Minister of Education on the good attempt. Now, I want to comment about why higher spending in Umbara than Angola, and I want to join it together with why the performance. You see, those of us who read some funny literature, it's very beautiful. Dialectical and historical materialism. If we are looking at this, we don't even look further. It is not a ethnicity. That is why I had already started by saying, if a school X can spend 10 times more than the other school, you expect same results. So, spending in Western Uganda were the first to rebel against Museveni's UPE. They rebelled, and they're the ones who created this boarding thing. It was a difficult thing. They spend a lot. The problem, the question is, why do they spend more? It's because of the income. We have seen a blue line of, or like Umbara, where you have middle income. By the way, Umbara is now under middle income with Wakiso and Kampala, maybe Jinja. These are middle income areas. So the ability of parents in Ankole are not now in terms of earning, and data show it that Umbara is among the middle income. So that's why they afford. It's not ethnicity at all. Me, I had seen it many years ago when I saw the disparity in spending. If you put the school fees they pay in Umbara, municipal in Umbara, in Lira, no parent would afford it. Children would simply not come. You put a Umbara Junior at 400 or 500,000 shillings. Put that school in Lira. Not even Lao College, a secondary school, people would come. So it depends on the ability of parents, the income ability. So the parents there have more money than the parents in the
How and why?
that is another economic aspect. But at least I wanted to tell you why the results. The results is because of higher spending. Why the higher spending? Because they have the money. Well, how they have the money, you can discuss. Finally, just in the passing about a playground. Playground, colleagues, I want to say it is a human right. Under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 33 provides for a child right to play. And states ratify this convention, knowing that they will implement. Even estates like Arkwright, do you know the government plan is that when you build an estate like Arkwright, even if it is a private venture, you are supposed to gazette a piece of land for children's play. Even when it is for estates. But now we flout those rules. We even flout to schools. But Article 31 demands a child's right to play. So in planning, we should put playing capacity. So whatever challenges is in education, the government has tried. But I think we shall do more. But I repeat that I congratulate Minister of Health for the, Minister of Education for the good attempt, but a lot has to be done yet.
Retired Major Awich Pollar, thank you so much for that submission and for joining us today for the show. Honorable Ochieno Joseph, thank you so much for joining us today. And Dr. Bireete Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. And you, our viewers, thank you so much for keeping with us all this time and always. This is the Citizens Judge on Civic Space TV. Remember, this is made possible by the Center for Constitutional Governance, and we send our utmost thanks to you, the team at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Special thanks to the people behind the cameras, Paul and Rashid, my producer. Thank you so much. And here we say good evening, and may you have freedom always.